All right, and I gotta try. This chair is a squeaky ass chair. I gotta.
Is it? I had a doubt. Is it 3 years we know each other or 2 years? 2020, 2021, 2022.
I met you in
3 years. Yeah, that's correct.
2020. Yeah.
2020. So 3 years. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I walked in the Trulioo office, and I was like in my head I was like, what the hell, like because you walk somewhere new,
Mhm.
like I'm like, what are you doing,
Yeah.
and then I met you, and always had a very good impression from you.
Thanks so much, man. Yeah, I've always looking up to you actually. Like, you're my leader, and I always appreciated what you are doing for the team, for me, like personally. And yeah, that's really great to be a friend of you.
I can just say likewise. When I hang out with you and your friends, it always makes me realize, like, one, like how kind you guys are, but two, like, oh, like how I can be a better person, if that makes sense.
Wow, great. Thank you very much, man.
So, you immigrated to Canada, and you came from Iran.
Yes.
So tell me what it was like to grow up in Iran.
Yeah, sure. So I was growing up in Iran. I was born like during the war. It was a war right after the previous revolution in 1979. And you can imagine that, like, growing up in a country in a war, it's not going to be great. uh, and yeah, but anyways, I went to university. I actually was able to graduate in a field that I really liked, computer science.
Did you always like computer science?
I always liked computer science. I started software programming like when I was 13.
13.
Yes. But at that time, I didn't have a computer.
Oh, so where did you learn?
It was just a class. There was some classes that you could take like during summer break. And I took a class in programming. Actually, I don't remember exactly, but I think it was a suggestion of my father. And then I took that class. It was some kind of like QBasic, GW basic, DOS and everything, very basic. And I just fell in love with it. But at that time, I didn't have a computer. So I was like, anywhere I go and there is a computer, I was just trying to sneak in and see what's inside and like open DOS, open QBasic, write some programs. Yes. And at that time, like I didn't have a computer, and even like internet wasn't great. It was just dial-up internet, very slow. And it took me a couple years until like I went to university. And I chose computer science. And then I was able to convince my parents that, okay, I think I need a computer now because I'm studying computer science. And then that was like the first time I was able to get a computer.
So did you, did they buy it for you, or did you have to like work to?
No, they did. They did buy it actually for me. And it was expensive, but it wasn't that hard for them to be able to do that. Like before that, there was just, they couldn't see any reason to buy a computer. But yeah, that wasn't that bad.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Like I know for me, like when I did the computer stuff, I would always break my dad's laptop because my dad worked from home, and he had this old Windows 3.1 machine.
Yeah.
And I used to break that son of a bitch. He'd have to call the help desk like every Monday morning, like, my son broke this.
Yeah, I know. No, it was, I would say like, and I was basically like the first person who had a personal computer in the family.
Oh, wow.
I was really happy with that. But yeah, when I started the university in computer science, I was spending basically all of my time on computer, like all of my time. Sometimes, like some nights, I couldn't sleep.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't. I just had to do something in the computer. So, yeah, that was good times. And then I finished university about like 4 or 5 years later.
In Iran?
In Iran.
Okay.
And then I was a good student because I loved computer. And I was able to find a job even like during the university program. Um, I was kind of working half. I was doing half work, half a study. And then right after I finished my university, I was able to get my first job after a couple of months in basically one of the biggest companies in Iran, which is the oil company, the national oil company. And
so
that was
what
so
kind
cool.
was it like internal software or?
Yeah, it was an internal software. So we were hired to basically develop a software that was already there, but it was on mainframes. So it was basically all financial, like handling all financial stuff at the oil company, which is huge, right?
Sure, absolutely.
But it was all like processes in mainframes, and they were just processes that were running once a month to just do the calculation and everything. But we turned that processes into a software, like a Windows software, basically, and people could just like create reports and enter their own data. Yeah, that was really fun thing to do. Especially as a first experience doing like some kind of big project for a large company. That was really cool.
I think me and your definition of fun for most people.
No, it's not fun.
No, but I totally understand. Like when it's a big system and you've never like experienced it before and you're learning that much.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but and I was basically happy with my job, but it was really difficult, like financial issues in Iran, like economy, basically issues, were starting to show up in like people's life.
So can you describe what a little bit of what that looks like?
Yeah, of course. Basically, if I wanna, let's talk a little bit about history.
Mm-hmm.
So, 1979, the previous revolution happened in Iran, and at that time, Iran was becoming kind of modern country with a good financial situation for most people. But then the previous Shah of Iran was trying to keep the power and everything like on his hands, and then basically people weren't happy with that at that time. People were happy with their life situation, but weren't happy with the government and the management of the country. Like basically, it was just one Shah, and everything else was just like, I don't know how to say it, but people didn't have too much say in what's important to be done for the country. Right?
So what's a Shah?
Shah is basically what's called. Let me see.
Supreme leader?
No, it's not supreme leader.
Okay.
I know. It's basically a monarchy, right?
Oh, okay.
Right. Iran was a monarchy at that time. And what do you call
like king?
The king, basically.
Okay.
Right? Shah was the king. This is the part that you probably wanna get rid of in the final production, but Yeah, Shah basically is the king of country, right? Um, it was a monarchy for about like 50 years or so. Iran has like in the history, Iran has had like a lot of monarchies, and yeah. So and then Khamenei, which is basically sorry, Khomeini, uh, was kind of like the opposition at that time, and it got like people got to know him, and he started talking about like the new system, and we want freedom and everything, and he started talking about like a lot of, I would say, uh, started lying, I would say,
Okay.
to people that Shah or the king uh, wouldn't work for people. And if we get the power, we are doing like lots of great things for people. It's gonna be like free electricity, for example, free homes. Like the old money should be for people.
Okay.
And people should be rich because we have a lot of oil, we have a
Mhm.
lot of gas, natural gas, and everything. And then uh, uh, people actually believed that, and they started protesting. And it wasn't just like it wasn't just 1979. It had started a couple years ago, and then like the revolution happened in 1979. And then after they got the power, uh, they basically started uh, excluding or removing all of the other parties who were at that time like they were trying to help with this revolution. They were helping this basically Islamic opposition group.
So when you say they,
There were like at that time there were a couple of opposition groups, like different groups, um, and they all helped Khomeini, which was the leader of the Islamic opposition group, right? To take the power uh, and to take down the king, the previous king, right? But right after the revolution, um, they they had a what's called they asked people if they want Islamic Republic or not. Like basically people that didn't have any option after that. It was just two options. Do you want Islamic Republic or monarchy?
Oh, okay.
Right.
So when you say Islamic Republic, you mean more like a religion focused government.
Exactly. That's
Okay.
true. And people already just took down the monarchy, right? The king. And so obviously, what's the answer? I don't know, to be honest, if it was a real voting system or not at that time.
Okay.
But they said that, yeah, most of the people said yes to Islamic Republic. And then they took the power. Everything turned to Islamic Republic government, right? And starting that time, everything is just based on religious, and a religious government like started forming and everything.
So did they force people to live a certain way or change, like to conform to the Islamic religion?
Not at that time,
Okay.
right away, but yeah, after some time they started like pushing people like in deciding about how people should live in basically every aspect of their life. Like they wanted to make decision about every aspect of their life.
So like, can you give some examples?
Yeah, for sure. Like a couple years later, after the revolution, they started talking about mandatory hijab. And when I say hijab, most people nowadays think of it as like a scarf that like women should wear, but it's not. Basically, hijab is a concept.
Okay.
And it's not just a scarf on your head. Hijab is basically a concept that Islamic government uses to create an apartheid regime against women, right? For example, as a woman, you are not able to attend any sport matches, right? You are not able like to go in a stadium to watch a football match. You are not able like to go to beach, and you can't wear anything you want. You have to like conform to some kind of like rules and regulations for what you are wearing in the street, basically.
And what happens if you don't follow the rules?
You are gonna get arrested because you are breaking the law.
And when you get arrested, what happens?
Very bad things, I would say. Like, first of all, is that I think it's better if we skip that part.
Sure.
Because I'm gonna like mention these things after.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, we started talking about this. I think we went too far down to the history. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what was the situation, what was the history that we got here. So I just wanted, like, if I want to summarize, I just wanted to say that after they took power, people started to realize that they were just lying all the time. And when they took the power, they started doing everything they wanted. And that had a lot of impact on people's life, right? They wanted to be able to manage money, oil, like previously before the revolution, they said that like Khomeini, like the Islamic group, they're not gonna be in the government. It's gonna be a secular government, and we are gonna be just a religious group who are what's called. Let's see. I have a note for that. That was... Recording podcast is not easy, man.
No, man. You actually
you need to be prepared. Yeah, and I'm kind of prepared, but
don't worry about it.
No, I'm not. I mean, it's just it would be much better if you have a structure. Like when you don't have a structure,
Yes.
you may talk about like different
Sure,
things
yeah.
from different places and that.
What I'm fine to go down any rabbit hole you want to go down.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can't find it now, but oh, they were like they were supposed to be just some kind of like spiritual leaders for people who believe in Islam, right?
Like priests or like
some kind of like
Okay.
something like that. But which they are, they already are, right? But they took the power, they got the government, they changed the laws and everything based on the Islam. And then that started affecting people's life, and people started realizing that just a couple of years after the revolution. And then because of all these issues, and they also like these are religious people, right? They don't know about economy and they don't know about politics, right? And
when you say you're talking about the people who came in power.
Yes, exactly.
The Harmony.
Exactly. And they didn't accept any criticism, right? Basically, nobody could talk against them. Nobody could criticize them. And if you do, you just get arrested. You go to jail for a couple of years, and sometimes you get killed. You just get disappeared, and all of this stuff. So, like in these many years, they've done it like basically every day, I would say.
They've done what every day?
Like just arresting everyone who's criticizing them.
I see.
Or like talking against them or anything. Like,
and are people scared because of that?
Exactly. Yes, people are scared actually. And as I mentioned, because of all these reasons, the basically economy started to fall down, right? And there's lots of economic crises every couple years. And the living situation was just getting worse and worse and worse. I was a professional, right? After when I finished my university, I started like a job in my field, and I kinda had a good income comparing to other people, but I wasn't able to live like I would say like if we compare it to like the standards in like living standards in West, it's not at all comparable. Like you just have to keep up with the inflation, right? Because there's lots of inflation, and you just have to keep up with that.
And when you mean keep up, you mean like when you get yearly increase, or when you're just trying to live, all you're just trying to maintain your standard of living.
Exactly. And you're actually good if you could keep up with that. Yeah, because most of the time people just get more poor, and they're all in debt and everything. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that every aspect of life was just getting worse, right? You don't have like human rights, economy, women's rights, right? Everything is just getting worse. You don't have a say, and they are just trying to make the government like not as smaller, but they're just accepting people who agree with them, right?
Okay.
And I don't know if there's a word for that or not, but if you don't agree, you just don't have any position in government, right?
Yeah.
So, and in a couple of years, there's a government. They formed a government who are just trying to push everything based on religion, and they just can't handle economic crisis and everything. It's just, I mean, getting worse. Everything, every aspect of the life of people, just getting worse. Just a moment. So, it's been a couple years working in my profession, and I couldn't keep up with life, and I was about to get married, and I was engaged with my wife. my wife now, I was engaged, and I talked to her. And now, before I talk about that, I need to say that like people uh, started realizing that Iran is not a good place to live.
And when you say people, you mean the people inside Iran?
Inside Iran. And everyone who could, they started immigrating to other countries, like basically Western countries, US, Canada, Europe, Australia.
And when did that migration start?
I would say it has started right after the previous revolution.
Okay, so
because
like,
some people realize it like really early, but the wave it started, I would say, like 20 years ago.
Okay, so like in 2000-ish time frame.
2000, yeah, exactly. Okay. When everybody realized that basically, and everybody was just trying to immigrate to other countries, but it wasn't an option for everyone, right?
Sure.
You either need to have money or you need to have a good education to be able to immigrate to other countries and also be successful, and like even like to just be accepted, right?
So is it like when you were growing up, like around 2000, you're in high school or just starting high school, was it like a dream of yours to move out of Iran?
For me personally, it has started when I was about 20-ish.
Okay.
In my early 20, I started thinking about that. But as I mentioned, it's not an easy thing to do, right? It's a long process. As I mentioned, you need to have money, either money, you need to have education. And it's also kind of, for most people, it's like an unknown destination, right? You just don't know, right? Because when living in Iran, you are not able to visit other countries easily. Like even if you want to visit any other country, you need to apply for a visa. That's a process. And then you still need to have enough money to apply for the visa and then to go visit other countries. So basically, it's kind of an unknown world outside Iran for people inside.
And is that because Iran's making it difficult, or external countries are making it hard? Or is it both?
It's basically both, I would say. But because the government of Iran doesn't have a good relationship with Western countries, that's really difficult to get a visa. Like usually when you have a like Canadian passport, for example, and if you want to travel somewhere else, you don't require to apply for a visa. You just get a flight, get a ticket, and then just go there, show your passport, and you are there, right?
For sure.
But if you are in Iran and you want to come to Canada, for example, just for a visit, you need to apply for a visa it's called like visitor visa. And just to apply for a visitor visa, you need to go like for a long process. Maybe it takes about like 6 months to a year. And you need to show lots of documents of what you were doing in Iran. And you need to show that you have enough money. I mean, and there's a reason for that, right? Like everybody wanted to get out of Iran. And there are people who just get a visitor visa. They go to other countries and they just become refugees, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't have any other way to do that, right? And because of that, it's just difficult, very difficult. Yeah, with Iranian passport, at the moment you probably just can travel to a couple of countries. which are not great.
Is Canada on that list?
No, it's not.
It's not. Okay.
It's not. You can just go, I think, to Russia, I guess.
Okay.
Venezuela, and some other countries like that. So I'm not gonna get into that. Yeah. Where was I? There's a lot.
So you were coming over with Mona, your wife. You were going to get married, and you were talking about where to live.
Yep. So I was talking about how people, like the wave of immigration started in Iran, and then about like 10 years ago, basically everyone's talking about immigration. Like everyone's just talking. I want to go. I just want to go. And previously, people had like a goal for immigration. By goal, I mean like they wanted to go to Germany, for example, or they wanted to go to the US or to Canada for some specific reasons. But like about 10 years ago, people just wanted to get out.
I see.
It's kind of like escaping from the country. And it doesn't matter really where you go, because everywhere you go is probably just a better situation for life. And then we just started talking about that. My wife and I started talking about that, and we were about to get married. And we said we either should start our life here, or we should just get married and go. And we did that. We did the later. So yeah, we had a couple of options. We talked about Germany. We talked about Canada. We did our research, and we finally chose to come to Canada.
And so why did you pick Canada?
There are a couple of reasons. When we did our due diligence, we realized that it's much easier to become a first-class citizen in Canada for an immigrant. That was, I would say, the most important factor in our decision. And yeah, that's basically it. And the other factor was that like my wife's uncle was living in Vancouver.
Okay, sure.
And he lives in Vancouver with his family, and we wanted to go somewhere that we at least know a couple people.
I completely understand that. Like,
yeah,
you
need support.
You're going across the ocean.
Yes.
Like you want to meet someone, like people that you know, right? Like
exactly. And yeah, and we chose Vancouver because my wife's uncle lives in Vancouver. So yeah, we made our decision. We started applying to come to Canada.
So what's that process like? Like as an Iranian citizen, coming to Canada, like what did you have to do like to be able to come over here?
Yep. There are a couple of ways that you can come to Canada as an Iranian. If you wanna do like I would say like the best way to come to Canada is a program called Express Entry. You probably already know about that. But that's really difficult especially when you are in Iran. That's a very difficult process for you because usually for people in Iran, if I wanna like talk about specific things, is that when you wanna apply for Express Entry, you need to have gather points. Like by points, I mean like your education has points. If you are married, you have some point. You get some point. Like for
if you're younger,
you get points. Like your English
Mhm.
exam test.
Yes. If you speak
get this-
French.
exactly. If you speak French, all of this. And when you live in Iran, it's usually really difficult to get enough points to enter this program. And so there are a couple other solutions that you can do. For example, you can apply for a university here.
Mhm.
You can get a job offer from a company in
Mhm.
Canada, but that's also really difficult. And one of the reasons is that Iran doesn't have like really good relationship with other countries,
Sure.
right? For example, if you are living in Canada or you are living in Germany, for example, and you want to apply for a job in Canada, I think it makes more sense for a Canadian company to talk and interview interview a person who's living in Germany, right, or in the U.S. Like I think it happened to you, right?
Oh, 100%. Like as you know, like Iran, it's on a lot of countries. Well, I would call it blacklist, right?
Blacklist.
Like you work for Shopify, right?
Mhm.
And you're not allowed to work
Exactly.
in Iran from Shopify in Canada.
Exactly. That's the same, right? That's
Yeah.
the same for
It's the
most
same
of the
for-
companies.
yes.
For most of the companies, right?
For US, for
Exactly. So job offer is kinda out, and we started thinking about like applying for university.
Mhm.
So we talked about it. My wife applied for a university in Vancouver, and she got accepted. And we started applying. Like when you get accepted from university, you now need to apply for a visa, for a student visa. So she was in the process of like her application basically was in the process, and it took about 6 months or so when she got actually like her student visa.
So she got accepted in university.
Yes.
After she got accepted, it took 6 months.
Yes.
Just to get the visa process.
The visa.
And how much time did she spend trying to get into school?
Before visa, you mean?
Yeah.
To get the acceptance?
Yeah.
About, I would say, 2 months or so.
2 months.
Somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're looking around like 8 months. Okay.
Exactly. And that's just her.
And that's just her.
And now, the partner of a student is able to apply for a work permit.
Okay.
And now, when we got her student visa, I applied for a work permit for myself.
And you're still in Iran at this point.
Still behind.
So you're both still in Iran. It's been 8 months. Your wife's been accepted to school. Exactly. She has a visa, and now you're getting your work permit.
Exactly. And now it takes about another 4 months for me to get a work permit, and almost basically a year for both of us.
And you're a high skilled worker. You're a software developer.
I am a software developer. Yeah, I've been a software developer like for 10 years before even I applied for Canadian work permit.
And your wife, did she have previous schooling, university, but before she came to Canada?
Yes, almost the same as me. She graduated as a software engineer. She also studied computer engineering in Iran. And she had a bachelor, right? Basically, a bachelor of computer science. And she applied for a master program in Canada. So
1 year later, you have all your ducks lined up.
Yes.
And you're flying over to Canada.
Yes, exactly.
What was it like when you're inside that plane? And you're going over, like, what were the thoughts going through your head?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a lot of mixed feelings, I would say. A lot. Like, it's just in immigration, it's much easier if you're younger, right?
Sure.
The younger you are, the easier you even get on the flight on the airplane, right? Because it's just you've done a lot in your life. Like we were at our like early 30s when we came to Canada, and we had like a lot of basically connections in Iran, right? Our friends, our family, and we are like basically kind of in the middle of our life.
Yeah.
And now you have to start from scratch. And when I say start from scratch, it's actually starting from scratch, right? Because you're coming to a place, you usually don't know anyone here. Or if you know, it's like really little.
Yeah, you've never met the people that you worked with.
No.
You don't have any friends.
You don't have any friends, and you probably have to spend all of your savings just to come to Canada.
If you don't mind me ask,
Sure.
How much did you spend to come to Canada?
I spent somewhere around like for the whole process.
Yeah.
Coming and settling in Canada, we spent somewhere around 30,000. 30K.
30K Canadian. So that's probably like 25K USD just for the American listeners.
And that's a saving of two people working for almost 10 years in Iran and not even paying for rent. Yeah. And that's a big decision, right? Because like I remember, and I talked a little bit about inflation, and now I can actually give you an example that I talk about with all of my friends when I talk about like our immigration process. When we started our application, every Canadian dollar is equivalent to 3,000 toman, which is basically the unit, the currency of Iran, right? 3,000.
So for every $1 Canadian, 3,000. I'm gonna call them Iranian dollars.
Iranian dollars, yes, something like that. And then, as I mentioned, my wife's uncle lives in Vancouver, and he came to Iran for a visit, like visiting family. And then we started talking to him like about the cost of living and everything, did the calculation. And he said, like, based on that calculation, we realized that with our saving, if we come to Canada and we don't have a job, we should be able to live for a year, for example, right? Okay. Something like that. Because like one of the biggest worries is job, right? When you're coming to Canada, you don't have a job.
Yes.
It's expensive and you just have to survive, right? And we were thinking about worst case scenarios, right? And we realized that without a job, we should be able, with converting our saving to Canadian dollar, with that 3,000 in your mind, we were able to live for a year. And then the time, as I mentioned, it took us about a year, and I'm talking about a year later. And now every Canadian dollar is 10,000 Iranian dollars because of inflation and like everything that's happening.
So all of a sudden, you can't live there for 1 year. Like
it's just 3 months
without a job. It's 3 months.
It's just 3 months, right? And that's even make it harder, right? So we came here and we didn't even like in our calculation, we were wrong, and we didn't even like involve a cost of furniture and like a new home and everything. So basically we came here, we paid the tuition fees for university for my wife, and we bought some really basic furniture from Facebook Marketplace, and everywhere we could. And now we are out of money. And yeah, that was really.
So what's that stress like? You're here, you have zero money, you're in a country that you don't know. You probably not as familiar with the language. The culture is completely different, and you don't have a penny in the bank.
Exactly. To be honest, I don't even remember those days. Like, because of the stress we had that time, we were just basically passing the days, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were just trying to survive, and it was just a lot of confusion, like language barrier, new culture, everything is just new. Like you are starting a new life in your 30s, right? And also, when you make that kind of big decision, especially when you live in Iran, I don't know about other countries, but when you live in Iran, there is always other people, like including your family, who are trying to convince you that it's not the right decision.
Yes.
It's a really big decision, and if it goes wrong, it goes wrong badly, right?
Yeah.
And you always, and when you do that, you want to prove that I wasn't wrong.
Yeah, of course.
I made a big decision in my life, and this is basically the biggest decision of my entire life. And you want to prove that you were correct. And that's really stressful, right? You know that there isn't too much support for you. Like if you fail,
yeah,
and you might even have to go back to Iran, right? For something that you spent almost all of your saving and a lot of time and effort, right? And if it's a failure, that's a big failure.
And I know in some cultures, like in the Indian culture, for instance, it's kind of almost shameful if you have to go back.
Yes,
is that the same?
It's almost the same. Yeah, it's almost the same. Although I would say families in Iran are usually really supportive. And it's probably just yourself who is destroying yourself.
I see. It's mostly on the inside.
It's inside.
I see.
Exactly. I don't believe that. I believe families, even if you go back, your family would support you.
I see.
Definitely. But still, it's big.
So, motivation is enormous,
exactly.
Right? So you're here, no job. You have 3 months to live. How did you find your first job?
My first job was actually I was referred to a friend of my wife's uncle. He had a kind of, I would say, IT support kind of company, who's working who's doing contracts for other companies, doing IT support, network support, and everything. And I had some experience of doing network administration in Iran before. I talked to him, and he said, "Yeah, that you can be useful for our company." But that wasn't my professional job, right? I was a database administrator. I definitely wanted to continue that.
And
but
for people who don't know, the skill level that you had versus the skill level you were doing was you had a much higher skill level than the work you were doing.
Exactly. I was even ready to do any job, right? I was ready to I don't know, do any general job, right? Because you just have to basically fight.
Yeah.
But I was lucky, I would say, and I got that job. It was about a month after I entered Canada,
Okay.
that I was able to get that job. As you mentioned, it wasn't the exact job I wanted. It's not my skill set, but still kind of related. And the pay was a little bit higher than the minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
So still another good point. But during that year, that year of like waiting for the application process and everything, I already started applying for lots of jobs.
And no one
answered. No one answered.
Of course.
But at least it was good for me to understand the process, how to apply for a job. You need to have a good resume. You need to have a good cover letter and everything. That was at least lots of stuff. That was educational for me, and I learned a lot. And that also helped a lot. Like I applied for Trulioo, the company we worked together. I think it was like during the first week I entered Canada, I applied for Trulioo.
Yes.
And then I realized like it was almost a week or two after I entered Canada, and I was still applying. Like I was just blindly applying for any position that was even a little bit close to my skill set, right? Software developer, front-end software developer, back-end software developer, database engineer, and everything. I was just blindly applying for like hundreds of companies. And then, and as I mentioned, I was doing the same when I was in Iran before coming to Canada. And then a week or 2 weeks after, I started getting lots of calls from companies and recruiters. I realized, oh, it was just a matter of a phone number and a Canadian address. And I realized, okay, the reason I didn't get any response was that because I wasn't in Canada. That was kind of encouraging. At the same time, a little bit of disappointment.
Yes.
Why is that?
But for folks listening, like if you're thinking about moving to like the U.S. or Canada or something like that, like Ehsan brings up a really good point, which is having a U.S. or Canadian address, having a North American cell phone number. Those are things that are huge. I don't know the legal ramification of this. But like if you know someone that has an address, right? If you can put their address to get, like I think that would greatly increase your chances of just getting a interview. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then about a month after I entered Canada, I was already doing the job that I mentioned before. I was doing network administration, IT support, and everything. And I got a couple of interviews with Trulioo and a couple other companies as well. And 2 weeks later, basically 2 weeks in my other job, my first job, I got an offer from Trulioo. And that was kind of a record. A record of like finding the first job in Canada among my friends that like I didn't know, but anyone I was talking to, they said, "Oh my God, you got an offer in the first 2 months of entering Canada. That's awesome."
First 2 months.
The first 2 months. Yeah. I got an offer, and then. As I mentioned, I was 2 weeks in my previous job, my first job, and I had to give them a 2 weeks notice. And that was a referral from a family. That made it a little bit more difficult and challenging. But I couldn't pass it. I couldn't just ignore it. That was my job, and that was a database administration job.
100%. And like I think that's something that people, I talk to a lot of people in jobs, and it doesn't matter if you're immigrating or in your current position. People forget to make the best decision for themselves, because the company is always going to make the best decision for them.
Exactly. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Still, I had some doubts, but I couldn't just ignore that. And then I just had to accept that offer. I gave the 2 weeks notice. I basically worked for 1 month for my first job. And then I moved to Trulioo in October 2018.
And then you were there for 2 years, and then I joined and I met you.
Yep. It was about 1.5 years, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
2018. Yeah. About 1.5 years. And then you joined. And then we started working on great projects.
And I do remember this, which is I definitely want to bring this up. When you were working in Canada, right? You at some point when you're working for Trulioo, the same company that I worked for, you had your work permit, and then you applied for permanent residency, which is the equivalent of like U.S. green card, which basically allows you to stay in Canada, work for any company, and then you're pretty much guaranteed to stay here as long as you keep renewing that. You're pretty much guaranteed to stay here, and it gives you eligibility for citizenship.
Exactly.
And I remember you're working at Trulioo, you apply for your PR, and COVID happens and all that stuff. And your paperwork is just slow, right? And then you get to this point to when your work permit expires, your PR application submitted, and then describe the events there, right? Because what happened to you there?
Yeah, sure. That was a hell of days, I would say, that we passed in Canada. A really, really difficult situation. So basically, after a year of working for Trulioo, and I need to say that started working for Trulioo changed everything. All of those worries that I talked about, like money-wise and everything, basically. And we just started after a couple months exploring the life in Canada and how is it look like to actually live here with a normal income, I would say. Like even my income wasn't really that high at that time because I think never mind. I don't want to mention that, but they just like they used to hire people like with a lower income, new immigrants. So a lot of companies do that, right?
It's a common practice.
Yeah, but I mean, even that, working with a really normal income, and you compare your situation when in Iran you have one of the highest incomes as a software developer, and you are not able to live the way you want, right? And you just realize that, and you just appreciate like this opportunity to come to Canada, live in Canada, and everything. I just wanted to mention that because I just talked about everything bad, and I wanted to say something good about here, and we get to that later as well. But.
So what you what you're saying is that one of the highest paying positions that you had in Iran, you're struggling to live.
Exactly.
You get a position in Canada, and it's a lower paying job position, and you're able to live comfortably.
Comfortably, yeah, definitely. Not just comfortably, like even more than comfortable. So, yeah, and then I worked for Trulioo for a year. And then after a year of having Canadian experience, now, if you remember, I talked about express entry
Yes.
And when you are in Iran, you are not able to get enough points
Yes.
to apply for express entry. Now, after working a year for a Canadian company, you basically have Canadian experience now,
Yes.
and you can apply for express entry. You basically can get enough points to apply for express entry. So it's December 2019. I applied for permanent residency. I submitted my permanent residency application. Based on the CIC website, it takes about 6 months for permanent residency application to get processed. And my work permit is expiring in 6 months, basically, exactly 6 months. So I submitted my permanent residency on December 29th, 2019, and my work permit expires on June 30,
Okay.
2020. Right?
So what you're saying is, by the time your work permit would expire, if the process goes well, your PR would be
exactly. I have 6 months plus 1 day in my work permit, and permanent residency is supposed to take about 6 months. And how COVID happens, everything gets slowed down, and we get closer to the time of my the end of June, my work permit expiring. And then there is a work permit that you need to apply if you have a permanent residency application in progress and your work permit is about to expire. You need to apply for something called bridging open work permit, which basically allows you to continue working in Canada while your permanent residency application is still in progress, and until you get a result from that. So I didn't wait until last minute, and I applied a couple days before my application, my work permit gets expired.
Yes.
I applied for bridging open work permit. And then June 30th passes. My work permit's already expired, but because I applied for PR and bridging open work permit, I'm allowed to work. There is no problem with that. And then on July 8th, I get a letter from CIC. And when you get a letter from CIC, it just has a title that says you have an update.
Canadian immigration.
Yes. It just says that you have an update. And I wake up with this notification on my phone, and I say to my wife, I think our permanent residency got approved. I think we are permanent resident. And I open CIC to see my notifications, and I see a letter that says, your bridging open work permit application refused, and you are not allowed to work from today. And I was thinking, what? I have that was just unbelievable. It was just a lot of weird feelings at that time, and you can't even believe it, right? You don't even believe that this can happen. These are the things that you usually always happen to other people.
Yes.
But it actually happened. And I would say, like I always say, that was a really stupid decision from the officer of my application. I always say that, and I'm not worried to say that, because the reason that they refused my application was just a letter that wasn't included. They wanted me to include a letter in the bridging open work permit application, but that letter was not in the checklist. They didn't say to include it.
I see.
And the only way you can find that you have to include that letter is to go to somewhere on CIC website and see what is needed for this application, what's required for this application. There is a wizard. You can go, you need to choose some options. Why are you applying? And there it says that you need to include that in your application.
So there's so for folks that don't know, when you're doing visa paperwork or you're doing a PR paperwork, there's a one single sheet, and it's like these are the things that you should accomplish, do in this order, and it was missed on there, and then you have to go on their websites that's not so user friendly to figure out where things are.
You basically are not supposed to go to that website. Because you have an application. You need to apply for application, right?
Mm-hmm.
It asks you a couple of questions.
Yes.
And it gives you a checklist. Right?
Yes.
You need to upload these documents to apply for this application. And that's the same for all applications, like for permanent residency, for work permit, for a study permit, for everything. And that letter was included in my permanent residency application. Already. But
not in a work permit.
Not in a work permit. And somehow they don't have access cross applications. So they refused my application and they said, you're not allowed to work from today.
So you're in Canada. Your wife's here. You were working. Your PR application is still ongoing, which means you're still allowed to stay in Canada, but you're no longer allowed to work.
Exactly.
Right?
That's true.
And one reason I highlight this is I've always found this to be foolish, right? Is if you have people living in your country, and it doesn't matter if it's US or Canada or wherever, you have people that are living there. Why wouldn't you want them to work? Like the number one thing you'd want them to do is work, right?
Exactly.
To contribute to the economy. So you're here, they deny you. And now all of a sudden you're probably in a downward spiral, right? Like you're literally freaking out. Like
exactly, you are in a crisis basically, and I totally agree with you, right? And it doesn't make any sense, right? To me, at least. Like I'm working in Canada for more than 2 years now, and you can easily see that. Even with just Googling my name, you can easily see that I'm actively just working for a good company in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a life here.
Yeah.
I've established a life here for a couple of years. And now I'm paying rent. And my wife is a student. And I have costs, right? Everything. And you just say that, okay, you're not allowed to work. What does that even mean? Like, it's just totally nonsense for me, to be honest.
I agree 100% because what they're essentially doing is saying you can stay here, but you can't contribute to the economy anymore, right? You can't be self-sustaining, which to me it's illogical.
Yeah, I can understand it for like someone who's visitor in Canada, but if you've been working in Canada for 2 years, I mean, like to me, it shouldn't be even an application for that. There shouldn't be even an application for that. Like if I have a permanent residency application, that means like permanent residency, for people who don't know, permanent residency application is one of the hardest applications to submit, right?
Yes.
You basically need to talk about all of your life, like and have documents for that, right?
Yeah. For people who don't know, it's your education background, your your high school,
exactly,
your university, your
military
service, your police records. They want to know in depth about all your family members who are alive, who are dead. Do you have any siblings? Your criminal history.
It's even harder than citizen application because I just submitted our citizenship application a couple months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that's even harder than citizenship application. And it took us a couple months to be able to just complete the application and click the submit. And in my opinion, if somebody already submitted their permanent residency application, that means they already passed a long process, and even just being able to submit it is a really hard thing, right?
Yes.
So if you were able to submit the application, you should be able to work until you have a response. That's okay if you your permanent residency gets refused for some reason. But if you've already applied for that and you've had a work permit, I think you should be able to continue working. So yeah, I get refused. I talk to you, the first person, and you don't believe it. And you go, and I go talk to our HR manager, and she doesn't believe it. And she says, it doesn't make sense. You should be able to work for us. And I continue working for one day, and the company talks to a lawyer, and he said, yeah, he's not allowed to work. And all of a sudden, all of my accounts, Slack, email, and everything,
all your work accounts,
my work accounts just get suspended. But thanks to you, you forced the company to get a lawyer for me and help with my situation and everything. So I get a lawyer, and she starts working on my application. And the first thing she does is sending a letter to CIC and asking for a reevaluation. And she asked them that you could have just asked for that letter instead of refusing the whole application. But she also said that usually, because it's not an official application and it's just an email, they might not even answer to that letter. So we have to, at the same time, apply for another application called restoration of status, which is basically some kind of another work permit application.
So what you're saying is the immigration officer had the option to request additional paperwork.
Exactly.
But they just denied your original continuation.
Exactly.
Work.
Exactly. And I can say that they actually reviewed my application for 2 minutes, only 2 minutes, because I received 2 emails that morning. One said, we have started processing your application. 2 minutes later, I get another email that said, we refused your application. So, my lawyer works closely with company's lawyer to be able to do something for my situation. I'm still waiting for my permanent residency application. She sends a letter for the evaluation, and she also submits another application. But she says that this application might take more than 3 months. And after any of your application gets refused, you can only stay in the country for 3 months.
Even if you have a PR in progress?
Anything, right? If you don't have a status, basically. Even if you don't have a status in Canada, you can just be here for 3 months unless you apply and you get a new status. It could be a student or anything, right? You just need, at that time, basically, I didn't have any status. So, and the reason I said the decision of that officer was stupid is that I'm living with this situation. I'm almost not able to sleep at night because of all this mess that I'm in. And I get a lot of support from my friends and my colleagues. and he does a great thing. He talks to my team, like to a pinch in, and they just collect a fund for me because it's just life and I had cost, and I still really appreciate that. And whenever I talk to anyone and I say this story, I always say Andy and my teammates, they are all great people. Yeah. So and I'm in this situation for 3 weeks, sorry, for 3 weeks. And then on a Tuesday, yes, I think it was Tuesday, after 3 weeks later, I get a letter from my lawyer that says they accepted the revaluation, and they accepted that they could ask for that letter. So your bridging open work permit that you applied is again in progress. But the problem is that there is no evidence, there is no letter to show the company that I'm now, because my bridging open work permit is back in progress.
Mm-hmm.
I am now able to continue my work, my job, right? But they didn't send me any letter that specifies that, right?
Yes.
It's just basically a screenshot of my application that says in progress again. And I have to convince the company that this is the situation of my application. I'm again in progress. I'm able to work. And they go to like talk to the company's lawyer to see if it's actually true, what they can do. And they finally, on Thursday, the same week, on Thursday, they say you can come back to work. You can start your work on Monday next week. And then the day after, on Friday, my permanent residency application gets approved. And all for nothing, basically. Like 3 weeks, all
weeks
stress of hell just for nothing. And yeah, and Monday, I'm back, but with permanent residency. Yeah, that was crazy moments.
I can't imagine, like from my perspective, like to have to go through something like that. Yeah. Like you're probably debating, right? Like back to your earlier point, is this the right decision?
Exactly.
Right? You're like that, like the whole time. You're
exactly.
Was this all for nothing?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was really, really difficult moments, but we passed it. We are Iranians, and we've had
you're Iranians in Canada with PR.
Yeah, we've had like really tough moments in history, so we are used to all these situations.
I think for me, it's a common story that I hear from immigrants, is the persistence of that, never giving up and just going, pushing. It's something I find very admirable.
That's true.
So, then life was pretty good in Canada for a long time until recently.
Mm-hmm.
And can you describe more of that?
Yes, of course. After that, we got back to normal life, and it was about a year later.
And I want to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No worries.
For people who don't realize, that was all happening in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
So like
exactly,
the country shut down.
Exactly.
You have all the stress from COVID.
Exactly.
And this guy is fighting, to survival.
For status. Yes, exactly.
Yes. I'm sorry. Go on.
No worries. Yeah. And then everything gets back to normal. We even now appreciate the life and the status we have in Canada more than before. we start working even harder. And a year later, in 2021, we bought our first home in Canada. We're so excited about it. And at the same time, I also changed my job. And I'm in a situation in my life that I'm actually like the happiest, I would say. I have a really good job. I work for a company that I always like to work for. And yeah, now I'm working for Shopify for a year and a half. And then all of a sudden, actually, before I mentioned that, before I haven't started yet, I wanted to talk about another thing. Is that 2020? Let me see. Just I wanna say the exact date, and we can rest for a couple of moments.
Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah. Before I talk about the current situation, I want to say that I was saying that like life got back to normal, and we have a good life, good job, and everything. But still, for most people, living in another country, basically, leaving the family and friends, it's still huge. It has a really big impact uh, on your life. And I would say you can never forget what you left behind when you came to Canada, right? Or like for any immigrants, especially for Iranians, we have a really special bond with our families and also friends, but mostly families. And that's actually really one of the things that makes this decision even harder is that bond, that relationship with the families. And you are here, and you are always worried. You are always worried about your loved ones.
Who you left behind.
Who you left behind. And they are still living in Iran in that situation. The situation that you escaped from, and you came here to have a better life. And you know how it looks like to have a better life. But and you cannot like talk about it with your loved ones because like some kind of I don't know, like you don't want them, because it's not easy for everyone to come here, right? As I mentioned, the whole process. And you want to make sure that you they know that you understand them, their situation and everything, right? And you are still worried, like you are worried all the time, because, like for example, the internet, like the government, for some reasons, sometimes shuts down the internet. I'll get to that later, but and you have no connection with your families. Like basically all of the connections that we have now is WhatsApp, Instagram, video calls, and everything. And you just all of a sudden lose all of it, right? For a couple of days. And there are so many examples of things like that or situations like that that happens basically every often. And even though you have a good life here, your part of you still is worried about everything that's happening in Iran. Did you join Trulioo at on January 8th of 2020? Was it January 8th?
It might. It was like the second week, January 13th, perhaps.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
So, and the reason I ask is that with all of these worries that you have, and you're always watching news about what's happening in Iran, for some people, it's easy to just completely shut down everything about Iran when they come to Canada. But for me, or for many other people that I know, it's not easy really.
You mean some individuals who immigrate, they're able to just ignore or just forget in essence about what's happening in Iran.
Exactly.
But for most people like you, it's not the case.
It's not the case. You're always following the news, what's happening today, and every couple months something happens, something big happens. And on January 8th, 2020, we see that IRGC, basically the military, not military, but the elected military of Islamic Republic in Iran, they turned down a flight, the PS-752.
They shut it down.
They shut it down
with the missile.
And then at that time, it was like a couple of days ago. It was the U.S. kills Qasem Soleimani, which is basically one of the leaders of IRGC.
President Trump at the time
exactly
had one of the leaders of
IRGC
assassinated
exactly
before the
flight, before they shut down the flight. And then everything starts everybody starts talking about a potential world war is happening, right? You probably remember that. And we are here now. You are again worried about your family, what's gonna happen and everything. And then you hear that that flight was shut down by the missiles, and you don't know what's happening, right? Was it a war? Is a war started in Iran?
Why was it shut down?
Why was it shut down? It was in Tehran, right?
And there was a lot of people, right? It was
176.
176.
176.
A lot of them were Persians.
A lot of them are Persians coming to Canada, actually.
And a lot of them were Canadian citizens.
Exactly. Basically Iranian, Canadian, some Ukrainian, because it was a Ukrainian flight. And that just one of those moments that you start thinking again, why am I here? What am I doing here? And
by that you mean why am I living in Canada having a good life and I've left the people behind?
Exactly.
Rather than try to improve the situation there, why am I still?
Yeah, exactly. And then there are lots of mixed feelings in these situations. And you are again worried about your family, at least, right? And the whole the country as a whole. That is it a war starting? Who did shut down the flight?
Why was it shut down?
Why was it? Why did that happen? And it's in Tehran, right? It's not in a border of Iran. It's in the middle of Iran. It's in Tehran. So
is Tehran the capital?
the capital.
Yeah.
Yes. And then everybody's talking about it was Iran who did that. But you always try in your mind not to believe it, because why would a government shuts down a flight with a lot of citizens in it, right? With a lot of Iranians in it. What kind of government can do that to the people?
Yeah, it would be like Canada or the United States in Washington, D.C., shooting down a plane full of people.
Exactly.
Of their own citizens for no reason.
Yep. And then it takes a couple of days until Canada, like, I think, finds out, like, the first country that finds out it was actually missiles from inside Iran. And finally, the government has to talk about it, and they say, yeah, that was us. But they say that was a mistake. That was a human mistake.
Yeah, they said it was they thought it was another missile that they were shooting down.
Exactly, which doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, because it goes up, right?
It doesn't make any sense,
like
right?
It's not coming in.
Yes,
it's going up.
And if it's a missile, it should have gone from somewhere outside country.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah,
you just realized it
inside
in the capital.
Yes, and the trajectory is going because was it landing or was it lifting off?
It was.
That's what yeah. So it was lifting off
exactly
from inside the country.
Exactly,
and they think it's a missile.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But you're always trying to ignore the reality before you actually know it, because you always want to think that no, there's no government that can do that, right?
Do you know why they did? What's your opinion of why they did it?
I don't really know, to be honest. But it's this government has done a lot of other crimes, right? And it's one of them. It's one of the biggest ones for sure. But they just do that in some situations whenever they think that something can happen and they might lose the power. They just do some crazy stuff. I'm not a politician, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been, and I probably don't have a good analysis of what's their goal of doing that. But one theory is that because of the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, it could, they did that to avoid starting a fight with the US, which I don't know how that can avoid a fight with the US, a war with the US. So
you mean what I think you're trying to say is they wanted to get revenge somehow. Exactly. And so rather than attack the US and then start a war that way, they said, we'll show them, we'll attack our own citizens because we can attack them without any repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't know, to be honest. At that night, what they did was they attacked a military, what's called military location of the US in Iraq, in Baghdad. And
when you say they, Iran did.
Yeah. And then they were alert at that time, because there might be a revenge from the US.
Yes.
And somehow they did that to a flight from Iran to just it's gonna be a big news, right?
Yeah.
And if there is a big news already there, US might like not get into another war for that, right? Because it's just, I don't know. It's I'm not a good person of like for analyzing these situations,
yeah.
but I just wanted to mention, the reason I mentioned that is that like even living in Canada, you are still always worried about what's happening today, and that could be any day. Like any day could be a new.
It's a heaviness that you have.
Exactly.
You're worried about your family, your friends.
Exactly.
What's the future of the country that you love, right? Because I've know we've talked a lot about the political side and the difficulties, the challenges that your country has, but there's also beautiful things, right? That I'm sure you love Iran for a lot of reasons.
Oh yeah. Iran, unfortunately, is kind of unknown to other people because of all these things during the past like 43 years, right? And Iran is a beautiful country. Like it's really beautiful. You've got to see it. And I hope that you can see it very soon because we're doing a revolution. It's gonna and it's gonna be done. Yeah.
And you
Very
mean
soon.
by beauty you mean it has very diverse climate.
Lots of different aspects actually. And I talk like cultural beauties, sceneries, and like everything. Like in Iran, in the same day, you can see summer, spring, winter, and fall
in one day.
In one day, in the whole country, right?
And the whole country. I see what you mean. Okay.
Like in south of Iran is just warm, hot, and like there's beautiful beaches. North of Iran is just forest and woods. It's like Vancouver basically. In north
Mountains.
of Iran, mountains. In west of Iran, there are lots of mountains, but it's very cold. And kind like in winter, it might get to like -20 or so. While south of Iran, like the city I was born in, is kind of like it could be like +20 centigrade and not Fahrenheit. I know it's, you probably need to Google it.
No, I've lived in Canada now for almost 3 years, so yeah. I'm getting better with the centigrade.
Yeah, and in east of Iran there are lots of deserts, and it's just, I mean, like you can basically see anything you want. It's really beautiful, and there is a really like huge history of Iran. Iran's been there like for more than 7,000 years, and you can see part of Iran. In part of Iran, you can see like buildings and like architectures from several thousand years ago, and these are probably not even describable. It's just something you've got to see the beauty. And people in Iran are kind. They love to have guests. They just love it. And they're very welcoming, and I'm pretty sure it can be one of the greatest destination for tourism if it's open to like people from around the world to be able to come to Iran, because it's not easy now. So yeah, because of all those reasons, it's a lovely country, and it's my country. So I always love it. I love the people in Iran. And yeah, that's why you have these kind of mixed feelings whenever something happens in Iran.
That must be really tough to I was at your house a week ago, and everyone like we were excited to see one another, but I felt this heaviness from all of you.
Yeah. In the past 5 months, another movement, another round of protests, I would say, started in Iran. And this time is different. And this time is really different. So the history of protests against Islamic Republic in Iran gets back to more than 15 years now. Like even more than that. Like, I mean, as I mentioned, like people started to realizing that this is a corrupt government. Like just a couple years after the revolution, the previous revolution. But people just did a revolution. They were tired and they were out of a war for 8 years, right? And nobody really had that encouragement to start another round of protest against a new government that we just did the revolution for, right? But it still, just about 10 years after the revolution, I would say the first round of protests started. It was, I think, late 80s. And it's part of the history now. It's called Koye Danishgah, which is basically Koye Danishgah.
Koye Danishgah?
Yeah, it's basically the name of that protest, which is Danishgah means university, and Koye means like the neighborhood.
Okay.
Right? So, because it all happened around the university, and they killed a couple of people in that protest, and they arrested a lot of students, and a couple of them were never found.
This was
late 80s.
Late 80s.
Yeah. I said that because I was talking about protests, and then I realized I need to talk about the history of protests.
Sure, yeah.
And then just a couple years later, there was another huge protest against this government because of like it was the president election, and that was I still remember that. It was basically the only time I voted because a group of reformists, they actually like started doing some movements, and they came to like with this slogan that we need changes, right? And we need to reform this government to be able to apply these changes, make these changes happen, right? And we were all excited. Oh, finally something is happening. And that was the first and last time that I voted for the person we thought it's gonna be the new president. But then I remember it was around 12. It was around midnight after we voted, and then they were live. They were counting the votes, and the president that we liked, the person that we liked to be the president, was ahead with a long distance, right? It was ahead, and we slept that night, and we woke up 6, 7 a.m. We were all excited. And then all of a sudden, all of the votes are for the other one.
Yeah.
And again, we are back to what we were previously. And we already like were excited. I think I was 23, 24 years old. We're all excited, and another protest started, ignited basically at that time. It was really huge. And again, with like any other protest, they started oppressing people with guns. They easily kill like their own people. And when I say it's unbelievable to see that your government does that to the people of your country. But when you think about it, you realize maybe not. They've been doing that for a long time, right? They had a mass execution right after the revolution, like the previous revolution. They executed a lot of people who were in other groups, in other opposition groups. I talked about it, right? As soon as they took power, they mass executed a lot of other people or opposition groups who disagreed with them, and you realize, no, that's what they are doing. That's how they want to keep the power, right? They do basically everything to make sure they can keep the power. So yeah, so the history of protests in Iran against Islamic Republic is a long history, and it just becomes short, like the periods between each protest, it just becomes shorter and shorter and shorter, right? I said shorter, but I did this. Shorter and shorter and shorter.
You mean after a protest stops and things get calm, it's becoming more and more frequent of when they start.
Exactly. Like it used to be 10 years, and then 5 years, and then 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, and now every 6 months. We've had like protests for different reasons, and there is always a reason that it starts a protest, right? Can we get some moments? I need to.
Yeah, for sure.